Hi, good evening, everybody. We're tracking the tropics. Deon Guillory here with Chief Meteorologist Jessie Gunkel. And so we're doing this to get all your questions answered because there's a lot of information out there and we want to make sure people know the real deal, what's going on.
Yeah, this is the Q&A session. So I know a lot of people have some big time questions out there, obviously. And maybe a question going to Deon right now, but here's the story. What we got is, a lot of big questions, concerns. We've seen a lot of these graphics out there. Is this thing actually getting any better, more organized? How much actual rainfall are we going to see? Right now, it's very difficult to actually figure out, hey, is Donaldsonville going to get more than Napoleonville or whatever? Again, I can't tell you your neighborhood quite yet, but what I can tell you is that the rain is on the way. And I just want to show you over the last advisory, winds are sustained at 65 miles per hour out there, Deon. And we are getting some gusts up to about 75. Way out here in the oil platforms out there, we're getting some readings up to about 80 to even 90 mile an hour wind gusts. So again, that is hurricane strength. This system, even though it's been fighting a lot of dry air throughout the day, it's actually starting to show some signs of organization. And I wanted to show you on this visible before sunset, because what happens is on the big picture, you can't really see it. All you see is like the radar, and it only looks like everything's on one side. But notice that circulation kind of wonky. This thing currently sits 85 miles south-southeast of Morgan City. But as you see here, here's Morgan City, a little bit south-southeast. You can see that circulation. Obviously, here we even had a couple clouds kind of slide through the capital area and through New Orleans throughout the day. But notice what's happening well south of here. A lot of convection. See how those clouds are quickly starting to flare up and bubble at this point? That is going to be our concern moving forward. A lot of people are being complacent with this system, just saying, oh, this is a tropical storm and a very weak Category 1 hurricane. We've gone through a lot worse. Well, I just want to say to most people, this is not a windstorm. This is going to be a rainstorm, right?
And that's the big
flooding storm. And I think that's the big takeaway with this system that people need to focus on. Not again the winds. The winds aren't going to do much unless we get very saturated and then we get some tropical storm force winds that could maybe topple a tree or two, and therefore power outages could be an issue with this system. But for most of it, as you see here, kind of those clouds kind of fanning across the area, we got to worry about the rainfall in the coming days. And right now, just a closer look out here, looking at your Doppler radar, you see a couple rain bands, and we're starting to see some heavier and more intense rain coming down in a lot of locations south of New Orleans, right along the coastline at this point. So far, further inland, we haven't seen much in the way of rainfall. Looking at those current rain totals, you see that we go from anywhere from 1600s in New Orleans today to even a ½ inch or just above it in Slidell. So far, nothing in the rain gauge at the Metro Airport at this point, but the rain totals will start to add up. I do want to show you some wind gusts out there, and today it's been very breezy here in the capital area if you've been kind of walking around. All day. We've been seeing those gusts anywhere in the upper 20s and even upper 30s out there. 37 now in New Orleans, and obviously 46 down in Houma. We've been watching our tower cams down in New Orleans, also watching I-10 and the Bonnet-Carré Spillway and New Orleans. Again, those cameras have been bouncing around throughout the entire day. No wind advisory, the reason being that kind of gets trumped by a tropical storm warning and a hurricane warning. So again, you don't see it because of that reason. But here's what happened. Hurricane Hunter aircraft went out there in the upper levels of the atmosphere, kind of a little bit elevated. They did find some hurricane force winds. Not quite yet translating to the surface, but yes, we are watching those wind speeds starting to increase, or at least getting more gusting out here. But I want to show you big picture, and this is what the latest advisory, you can still see moving west, northwest, and this is the concerning number right here. And this is the one I want to show most people, Deon. It's 4 miles per hour. That's how quickly it's moving. Well, that's not quickly. That's just inching and crawling at this point. So as you see here, the concern is, notice all of that thunderstorm activity. That atmosphere is very juiced up well in the Gulf. There's an unlimited supply of moisture out there. And as you see here, those rain bands are finally starting to find the center of Barry at this point, or that center of circulation, and it's starting to wrap around it. And as you notice, those bands are going to start to eventually come in over the next couple hours. So we got to watch this long fetch here and move back into New Orleans. And if this thing inches a little bit further west, well, a lot of that rainfall is going to come right up I-10 and right into the Baton Rouge area over the next couple hours. So I'm going to show you the track, and then I'll start answering a couple questions out there, because again, this is going to be the big takeaway. With the latest advisory, the pressure is still sitting at 993, so that hasn't changed over the last few hours out there. But I do want to point, tropical storm, very strong tropical storm, winds at about 70 miles per hour. You can't see it here, but there's a very brief window that right before landfall, we could see a Category 1 storm. They're still forecasting that. It's a very small window, and it looks like landfall is going to be somewhere between Vermilion Bay and Morgan City at this point. With the latest track, it kind of inched slightly, just very slightly closer to Morgan City at this point. But that really doesn't matter, obviously, because, again, we're not going to see too much in the way of hurricane force winds here in Baton Rouge. We're just going to get some strong wind gusts, maybe in the 70 category, getting very close to hurricane strength, but I still think some very strong tropical storms here. And if you notice, even at this hour, by the time we get to about Saturday afternoon, tropical storm moving inland, weakening a little bit, but not by much. So we could still see some pretty steady winds out there, especially if we get a lot of rain overnight. This is not Gustav, but it's kind of following the same path. And if everybody remembers Gustav, it went up the Atchafalaya Basin, all right? Then we still had some very strong winds. Gustav was a Category 3 at one point, then a Category 2 and 1 coming inland. So those winds were a little bit stronger, but here's the thing. It doesn't matter. If the ground is very saturated and our root system, obviously for a lot of our trees, aren't that deep, so we could start to see those trees start to topple in a lot of areas. We got a lot of wooded areas in a lot of locations, and if we get record rainfall, well, that's going to definitely be an issue for us. And then it drives through the state. Still possibility that it could be a tropical storm before it makes its way even into Arkansas at this point. So, and then it kind of drives out of here and moves off towards the northeast, but we could be dealing with rainfall until maybe Monday going into Tuesday at this point. So what are some of the questions we got here, Deon?
One thing, can you go back to that?
Which one?
This one. So is this the time? Is 1 a.m. landfall time, or is this?
With the current track, this is what, no, that's not landfall.
Okay.
So it's somewhere actually in between there, and because this is low moving. Problem is, right now the center is a few miles off the coast, but it's kind of almost following the coastline. It's kind of wobbling in a westward direction, northwestward direction along the coastline at this point. So when does it kind of make more of that northward turn and drive in? That's the big guess at this point. It's kind of walking this way. Now it's got to start heading northbound. And once it starts going northbound, well, then we can kind of pretty much figure out exactly when landfall is going to be at this point. So obviously, next 12 hours, well before 24 hours, this thing is going to be inland.
Okay, all right. That's one of my questions. I know a lot of you have questions. You're posting them. Thank you guys for joining us.
It doesn't show hurricane strength, but we are still forecasting. Again, it's a very small window out there that we could hit a Category 1.
Okay, that's something to think about when if you're still preparing for it. That's something to think about. All right, so let's get to Donna Foreman Donahue. I hope I'm saying your name right. She asked, when the storm rolls through the area, will the winds blow from the southeast direction or all directions?
Okay, did she say where she's from? Liz?
She didn't say, but if you can, Donna, let us know where you're from.
Yeah, if you can give me a location, that would be a little bit easier. But if you live in, say, Baton Rouge, okay, those winds obviously are going to be coming around in this general direction. So it's actually going to change as that system comes through. Right now, we're getting a lot of those winds coming across in more of a east to west kind of pattern at this point. But as soon as that system moves a little bit further north, well, then those winds are actually going to be coming from the south or across us. So that is going to kind of depend on where Barry sits and its current location.
Okay.
So if you're worried about lawn furniture, if you're worried about a certain side of your house or something, anything that could possibly pick up, move it. Lawn furniture, kids' toys, they talked about that. Flags that you have outside your house, bring that in just in case.
And those can become projectiles and do some damage in a different type of way.
Correct. Yeah, again, also tree limbs that you think might look a little bit on the weak side at this point. If you still got a little time before sunset, again, make sure you cut those down and do what you have to before the winds start picking up later on tonight and going into tomorrow.
Okay. Scott Crandall asked, what is the probability of another system forming after this hurricane makes landfall and a roundabout time frame?
That's difficult to say quite yet. There's another invest out in the Atlantic at this point. Will it get here? I don't. Well, again, right now we don't have.
It's really far.
That's just too far to say at this point. So again, I don't know. Immediately, there's nothing right down the road. This is our immediate concern.
Okay. Back to Donna. She's from Zachary.
Oh, Zachary. Okay. So again, Zachary. Obviously, that's going to change. Right now, east to west, and then a lot of those winds. Well, obviously, as the system moves a little bit towards the north, you can see those winds may even come at some point from a southwest direction before it even slides a little bit further north.
Okay. Brandon Garrett is asking, what percentage of isolated tornadoes are you predicting, low, medium, high? I know that was part of the conversation, but...
Yeah, I do want to point out this, and if I can I'll jump through here a little bit if I can, and I'll show you this graphic. The one I want to point out is because you get these feeder bands out here, it's easy for us to see those tropical funnel clouds. They can spin up very quickly, and they're not usually very strong tornadoes, but they still can do some damage out there. So what we're calling for maybe EF0s, EF1s, possibility of an EF2, and let's jump ahead here a little bit. Okay, we are under a slight risk for severe weather, and that is overnight. This is the area indicated by the yellow. That's tonight into very early tomorrow morning before 6 a.m. But notice what happens. The entire viewing area goes under that slight risk for severe weather heading into the daytime hours of tomorrow. So for 6 a.m. and that goes until the previous day, or at least until Sunday morning. So that threat may even continue throughout the day on Sunday. Okay.
Paula, Simon, and Harper asking, what are the expected levels crest for Comeet at Greenwell Springs?
At Greenwell Springs, can we jump out of that for just a second? Can we go to the Waze computer out there? I just want to show you one. Okay, this is a little bit further downstream. And again, if you've seen some of these images, stay or at least pay attention to the river stages. You can go to our website and there is a link, because if you look at some of these forecasted totals, and this is for 10 days out, this is Amy River at Denham Springs, but notice they're calling for river levels to crest in the major category at 41 feet. The old record was 46, and that was back in 2016. So again, we're getting very high out there. This is the next 10 days, and this is if the current forecast holds. You're talking about, let's see if we can back out here, and I'll show you the big map. Yeah, I'll show you this. So you're talking the Comeet at, you say Greenwell Springs?
Yeah.
I don't believe they've got that one registered quite yet, but they don't have a forecast for that. But I can show you a little bit further upstream, and notice this is the scary part about this one. You see Comeet River at Jura Road, 34.5, and the old record was 34.2. And obviously we saw what happened then in 2016. And again, you can see those levels quickly elevate across here. Again, I don't want people to get too worried quite yet, because this could all shift. We're going to watch those rain totals slowly start to add up over the next couple of days. This is just a forecast. If the system slides further towards the west or towards the east, that could drastically change these numbers. But please be on high alert as we move again into the next couple days, because what you're seeing here is, notice, that's Friday, that's Saturday,
right.
Here's Sunday, here's Monday. We're not even cresting until probably late Monday going into Tuesday. That's when the levels are going to get into that major category. So even though the storm passes, we got to watch all that water drain into, I call it the little capillaries, but are very small streams and bayous that goes then into the Comeet. Same thing with the Amy. They all meet up at Denham Springs, and then everything filters downstream. Obviously, the Bayou Manchac, and then everything down into...
It's got to go somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. It goes into Lake Maurepas, and then eventually Lake Pontchartrain.
And then, you know, Jesse's saying that that's where we're watching these. This is why we're doing this, because we know you guys have questions, and so we're trying to get your questions answered.
And I think also the other part about this is, because this is alarming, 2016, we really didn't have to worry about storm surge so much.
Right.
That is actually acting as a roadblock. So what's happening is, the way it's kind of, water's coming downstream from all of our rivers once the water starts coming in. Well, you got water also coming in from the Gulf of Mexico. The wind's been pushing in, and if you see those pictures of Grand Isle and a lot of those areas where the water's starting to cross some of these roadways, well, that water's actually pushing back against these rivers. That's why they're concerned about the Mississippi River in New Orleans getting up to about 19 feet. Should stay below levee, but that's because the water's actually pushing up the Mississippi River. All right, same thing, pushing inland through Lake Pontchartrain into Lake Maurepas, and it's actually pushing and backing up into the Amy River. So what happens, you can get into a roadblock, water's got to go somewhere, and that's where you get that backwater flooding. So backwater flooding could be a very big issue as we continue to move forward.
Okay, question from James Peck. Have the projected river levels taken into account the slow pace of the system?
Right now, yeah, James, I know who James is. All right, James, here's the deal. Yes, this is a 10-day forecast. They're putting in the pace. They're figuring out with the current forecast. We're talking anywhere from 10 to 20 inches of rainfall, and then they're factoring in maybe those localized areas where we could see 20 to 20 plus inches, or obviously 25 plus inches of rainfall, okay? That could change. If we only see 10 inches of rain total, then these numbers will drop drastically. This is just the forecast. This is kind of like the worst case scenario right now. And the main thing is also, it looks like we could be dealing with a little bit of rainfall, possibly through, again, Monday, Tuesday, and maybe even into Wednesday of next week.
Oh boy. Okay. Here's another question. Okay. Wayne Killian asked, why does this storm look so different on the radar than what we're used to?
It's an asymmetric storm. Can we flip it back to Max 1? And I'll jump back here. And if you notice, it almost has that comma signature out there.
That's what I was going to,
well,
because we talked about the comma, but today the comma is not so nice.
You see, again, I just want to show you on one of our models, you see it here broad, but pretty much all that thunderstorm activity is literally on one side of the storm. Well, because early in its life, it ran into some actual factors out there that kind of inhibited it from developing. We had a nice little dry slot at one point that didn't allow that thunderstorm activity to develop on the other side, and that's why we didn't see that rapid intensification. Also, we had some wind shear out there. That's why a lot of those clouds were kind of blown off towards the south and southeast over the last couple days. Well, that's the concern. However, this thing was shallow and it was still churning out there, still kind of keeping alive. Pressure has been slowly dropping out there and it's still kind of staying alive, and that's why you usually only see it on one side at this point.
Man. All right. A big question a lot of people have been asking, and I know we've kind of already answered this question in previous times, but it keeps coming up. People are asking, particularly Brad Gotro on here, will it flood like 2016?
Yeah, I know. That's really hard to say at this point. I can show you this. We're under flash flood watch. That's for the entire viewing area, almost the entire state. And this is the concern with the latest estimates, still sitting in that 10 to 20 range. Maybe some areas seeing a lot more than that. However, again, we are looking at multiple days of rain, very much like 2016. 2016 was a different type of beast because it sat over us for quite a few days. We had some areas over 30 inches of rainfall. So again, that was a lot over a very short time span. Again, it just depends on where all this rainfall actually happens. Because if it moves a little bit further south, then the concern is if it stays all south of I-10, then this is not going to be an issue for people north of there, right? If it falls across the Florida parishes, then it's all got to filter into the Comeet and the Amite rivers, the Tickfaw and the Tchefuncte, all moving southbound, all right? That's where we could see some issues out there. If a lot of the heavy rainfall sits around Ascension and southward, you could see some flooding then in Ascension, Port Vincent, Santima, Prairieville, Sorrento, all those areas kind of in between all the way to Laplace, then you could see a lot of the heavy rainfall out there. If it moves a little bit further south, then obviously a lot of that rainfall, if it moves to the other side, we get all that heavy rainfall in the Atchafalaya Basin, it's got to go to a lot of areas such as Pierre Park, down in Morgan City.
Right.
Because if you're on the other side of the Mississippi River, then all that water is going and filtering down through the Atchafalaya and coming back out through Morgan City. The other takeaways, I've had a lot of people ask me, well, is the Mississippi River going to flood? Should not. That's the hopes. I mean, they've been showing a lot of footage of downtown, and it's very close to the levee. They keep talking about it being for, I think it's over 250 some days, 56 days.
The longest on record.
Longest on record above flood stage. Well, that should be fine because that water's coming from way up here, well outside of the state. A lot of it is. We're talking the Red River, we're talking the Missouri River, we're talking the Ohio River, we're talking the Wisconsin River. All those other rivers are what filter into this. However, again, if we do get some heavy rainfall and this system, slow mover, moves up, the Arkansas River, all those rivers in between could eventually cause us a problem, but that may not be for another couple weeks.
Okay, because it has to move, and then it's going to bring that.
Yeah, Tennessee Valley, that whole area, Ohio River Valley, all those rivers go into the Mississippi. So if they get slammed with a bunch of rainfall, that could be another issue coming down the pipe, but not immediately. The immediate concern is going to be the Comeet, the Amite, Bayou Manchac, a lot of these smaller, if we get that flash flooding kind of like we did about 5 weeks ago, you got to watch those little creeks out there, Ward Creek, Bayou Paul, all those other ones kind of in between.
Okay.
And if you live kind of close to a lot of those, just be on high alert. If you go to the River Forecast Center, water.weather.gov, you can find all of those little bayous, all those little streams, all those little points in between. down the E-main and the co-main.
Okay. Another question, and you talked about Barry. Barry's a tropical storm now. A small window of it becoming a hurricane and then back to a tropical storm. Julia's asking, is it possible that it could be downgraded?
Yeah, easily. I mean, strong tropical storm may not get to hurricane strength, but still, I think that's the least of our worries at this point, because we got to honestly worry about rain. And I can show you this. I just want to show you these two models. This is our in-house model, the RPM. And you see, this one's tracking just slightly further west. And notice the difference here. Not bad going through late on Monday, right?
Right.
However, all the rainfall is sitting well towards the west. Show you another model out here, and this is a global model, the American model. This one tracks a little bit closer to us, and just a few miles east or west could be the difference out here for us seeing either nothing or something. Obviously, you can see some of these areas quickly adding up, and you can see the totals going anywhere from 12 to nearly 15 inches of rainfall in some spots, and it just really depends on where those bands set up.
And does this have to do with on what part of the eastern part, or the eastern side rather, of the storm that we sit? Does that have anything to do?
And is it close to the center of circulation? Because again, a lot of those bands could be even somewhat displaced. It could be usually with a hurricane, you look at your central point, you could see that central eye.
Yeah, you can see that. You can't see that on this
That
one.
is the center of the storm. You can't see this because it's wide. Just imagine this. It would be like a donut in a massive hurricane like Katrina, donut with a pinhole in the middle, right? That is your eye. Well, think about an actual donut has a big wider hole in it. Well, that's kind of what we're seeing here, because it's not completely closed off. It's just a wide circulation. So a lot of that is a lot of times not centered over the actual center. So even if the center track runs, say, right up through here, you would think, well, that heavy rainfall might be right here. It could be right over here.
Right, it just depends.
All right, because of that, because it is a very big hole on the onset of that's where that rain could begin kind of draped and just basically slapping much of southeastern Louisiana.
Barry the donut hole. We don't like him.
Yeah,
all right, we don't like Barry. All right, Tina is asking, how long do they calculate it will take for 10.5 inches of rain to fall?
Again, that all depends on what band, if you sit underneath one of those heavy rain bands, because if we get stuck under one of those bands, you could easily get from 2 to 4 inches of rainfall in a very short period of time. And that could add up hour after hour after hour, and that's where you start to see those totals quickly kind of jump.
There was another question up further that I think I lost.
Well, let people know too that if they have questions for our evening newscast, Fox and starts at 9 and also for NBC at 10,
we will answer them.
We'll try to answer them. That's what we're here for, because we want you guys to be safe. I know a lot of people have so many questions. I've been kind of getting blown up on social media, and I've been trying to answer what I can on there, besides doing all the cut-ins and radio and whatever.
It's a lot. So trying to get all the information
I will
out.
try to get to as many questions as possible. Again, best thing you can do is be prepared, but don't panic, all right? We all know what happened with 2016. We all remember Gustav. We all remember Isaac. A lot of rainfall for a lot of areas, and our government's already on top of it. We've had multiple press conferences. They know what's going on right now.
They're on top of it.
They're ready, from the mayor's office, from here in Baton Rouge to New Orleans. They're watching everything right now. We've got areas under curfew. We've got a lot of closures. We've got sandbag locations.
Ascension Parish is opening a shelter
at 8
o'clock.
Just in case. So we're going to keep you updated, obviously. So we're going to have more and more updates through the evening hours. And if necessary, we're going to go overnight. And obviously, we're going to have continued wall-to-wall coverage as it gets a little bit closer.
Yeah, and so with that being said, thank you guys for joining us. Your questions, send them more. Send more of those questions, and we'll continue to answer them.
Also, we love, and it helps us out a little bit too. You can either pass it to me or Deon, or even to our newsroom on our main page. Footage. If you guys have any pictures or reports of flooded roadways, closures, can't get around because of barricades, we like that information so we can relay to other people so they're not stranded or get lost in this type of situation.
Or even just the fact that, you know, it's windy outside. You know, the best way we can tell the story is through your eyes. So
because we may not know exactly where all the power outages are. We may not know where there's a down power line, or because again, that could be very dangerous where there are even like traffic lights out. So yeah,
And if that happens, use it. You can use the stop sign thing. So you treat it as a four-way stop. Use it as if it's a stop sign. But we're being told we got to wrap things up here.
Okay.
Jesse, great as always. Man full of knowledge. All right. Continue to send us your questions. Also, we want to, if you have videos, pictures, or anything, and you want to put it on social media, use the hashtag TrackingBarryBR. That's what we're going to go with. TrackingBarryBR. Thank you, guys.